Okay, genuine question, guys. If I started a GoFundMe to do skydiving and recreate this, because again, I don't get paid for any of this shit, because if I did, I would happily pay for it on my own. But if I started a GoFundMe to do this panel exactly, would y'all want that or nah? I think I'm still just carrying that excitement over from my holiday, but I thought I'd just ask. Because I'm not gonna lie, I'd be down to do this. I'd be down to do more insane IRL shit. Who knows, maybe it could be the 10K special. But anyway, let's talk about some of the training that the Blue Lockers have had to go through. Let's go in chronological order because we've got Barrow first, and Barrow got sent to do American football training. And I think there's two things that we can take away from this. One of them is that Barrow is obviously going to get physically stronger for the U20 World Cup. And the other side is that with him being on a team with other people who are kind of the same as him, it's going to kind of refine his kingly aura because he's now leading people that are on the same level as him. Does that make sense? Let me give you like another example. So hypothetically speaking, Barrow is a lion, but he's like an adolescent lion. So for him to learn how to be an adult lion, he's hanging around with other fellow like adolescent/adult lions. And then he's going to work his way up the hierarchy until he becomes the king of the pack. And all of that is going to be experienced for when he's actually the king of a team, if any of this makes sense. Because this training is kind of exposing Barrow to players that are not just going to roll over and listen to everything he says. Because I also imagine that these other players have massive egos and they're big and strong, so they're not as intimidated by Barrow. So it's going to force Barrow to learn the skills of being a king without just ruling out of dominance and kind of intimidation, if that makes sense. The second one is Bachira, and Bachira's is really obvious. It's kind of just mending his childhood. Because Bachira was kind of isolated for how he saw and played football, Ego's kind of fixing that broken part of his childhood because now Bachira is being the person that he wanted somebody else to be for him. And the other thing is that Bachira is a freedom ego type. He literally said before the NEL started, he doesn't care where or what he does as long as it helps him get stronger in some sort of way. So Ego sent him off to go to a grade school because this is where Bachira's mentality is kind of stuck at. Because this is basically finishing off his 0 point that we saw in the second selection. You know, like in the second selection, Bachira got stole by Rin, and then Bachira went through an awakening when Isagi came back to play against Rin. And then obviously Bachira goes through his 0 point, but he gets blocked by Isagi. So this is basically the finishing part of it. Does that make any sense? Just imagine that like Bachira's 0 point happened in the second selection and then just got put on a long ass pause. And then this is it finally coming full circle and being mended. The next person's training we're going to talk about is Chigiri's, because I think Chigiri doing this sort of training is obviously going to help him with his sprinting and his stamina. So maybe it's me just reading it too much, but with Chigiri obviously going to get injured in the future, this could be another avenue for him to do something. Because obviously his ACL is going to tear and he's not going to be able to run as fast or as consistent as he used to. And with Ego saying, throw away your legs and become a fish, is this supposed to be like foreshadowing, or am I reading way too much into it? Because I'm like 99% sure that the different types of swimming styles you can do obviously targets different muscle groups. So if Chigiri gets injured in the future, he could do more of like a butterfly stroke because that incorporates more of your lats, your shoulders, and your arms. It's still reliant on your legs, obviously, but it's not as reliant. And with him being in a pool, he's not putting as much pressure on it. So maybe it's me just overreading it, but this seems like foreshadowing that Chigiri's going to switch to swimming in the future. The next one, Kunigami Rensuke. And I think Kunigami's training here is to, again, kind of like Barrow's training, it's in pursuit of building up that kingly or hero type of aura they're going to have. Because if we're going like for historical accuracy, a king can't be a king unless they've experienced battles before and won them. And so far, the battles that Kunigami has had, he's lost them. He did decent in the first selection, he then got kicked out in the second selection, so that's his first loss. Ironically enough, it was against a dragon as well. He's then in the wild card through the third selection and the U20 game. And then when he comes back in the NEL, he does technically kind of lose again. So I think Ego's been pushing all of these battles and sort of like hardships onto Kunigami because that's what makes a true hero. So Ego pushing all of these problems onto Kunigami and then telling Kunigami that the answer lies within the battles that he's having while trying to fix said problems. Maybe it's just me, but it seems like Ego's trying to fix the fractured parts of Kunigami's ego so he can actually be a hero. As a superhero, he needs to experience what it's like when he can't save people, so that way he tries even harder to be a proper superhero. Kinda like how Uncle Ben and Batman's mum and dad die before they actually take up the mantle of being a hero. They need to experience a huge loss before they can actually don the mantle of a true superhero. Does that make sense? I hope that makes sense. Then moving on to my fucking go! And this is exactly why Shido is my favorite fucking character. All the other players are going through exposure therapy about something that's either really important with their 0 point or training that they need. And this nigga's just been sent on vacation for 2 weeks. But to give you a reason as to why Ego decided to give Shido the 2 weeks off and cover all the expenses, Ego is giving Shido the freedom he's always been searching for, because if you go back to the U20 game, just after scoring the Dragon Drive and just before scoring the Big Bang Drive, Shido says to Sai, because they did that Reflex X Reflex combo, this is the first time somebody's understood my idea of freedom. And maybe this is me just projecting hard as fuck, but with my experience of going onto that trip and then coming back and having that break, being able to go off and do a load of crazy things like rock climbing and karaoke and TwitchCon and shit, I'm not gonna lie, I was hype as fuck to come home and start making videos again. Like, I don't really know how to explain it to you guys, but let's say if your job helped you then do a load of fun things you've always wanted to do, that's going to kind of inspire you to do that job better because it allows you to do fun stuff. Like, that's my angle at least. So Ego let Shido go off and have as much fun as he possibly could for the next 2 weeks because that's going to make Shido want to play even better when he comes back. Hopefully that makes sense. And then switching over to Rin needs to kind of reevaluate his ego. That's what Ego is saying to him now. Because yes, in the NEL, it was good enough in the PXG game to earn him a bid that was equal to Isugi. But if we're talking about like the future-proofness of his ego, it's not that solid because it's very emotional. Because we see from Yukimiya that if you just tunnel vision on a certain feeling or sense when it comes to playing football, you're going to reach a cap. So that's why I think Ego is saying your desire should not rely on pure destruction. Because, like I said, although it was good enough in the NEL, it's not going to be good enough in the World Cup. We don't have time for ball-hogging Rin. And if he's worried about finding an opponent that's equal to Isugi or Sai on the enemy team before he scores, there's a potential that Rin could kind of fuck up the World Cup if he doesn't lock in right now. But let's go over to Reo, because Reo's training is really simple. It's kind of what I said I hoped it was in the previous chapter. Ego sends him a bunch of videos of the other plays that the other players have made, and then he's told Reo to copy them and be the master copy, because Reo's going to be the special soldier of Blue Lock. And for reasons that I said in the previous fucking video, Reo's going to be the special puzzle piece that Isugi needs to fit any situation. Like I said, if he needs something that only Corona can do, but Corona subbed because he's injured, Reo can do it to 99%. If he needs Kiora or Hiyori or Karasu or like anybody like that, Reo can copy them. So Reo's going to be the perfect puzzle piece for Isugi because he can fit any situation, because he can copy anyone. But to kind of jump through the rest before I start talking about Nagi again, I think Karasu is doing marathon training because we know from Isugi in the Manshine game that using Metavision all game is incredibly taxing. So I think Karasu's doing endurance training so he's able to use Metavision all game. I have no idea what Atoya's doing, but I imagine it's something to do with like stealth missions. So let's just say, hypothetically, he's playing Assassin's Creed in VR. We've obviously got Raichi doing wrestling because he's a meat shield. Kiyora's doing breakdancing because it's going to help with his balancing and possibly his ball keeping abilities against stronger opponents. Because we saw in the episode Nagi manga, he does do some breakdancing, but we haven't seen it in the main storyline yet. So maybe this is going to be him carrying it over now. We've got Corona, who's just racing dogs. And I think it's specifically a dog because when it comes to like fast turns and agile movements, at high speeds, dogs are pretty good at it. Obviously, dogs aren't the best at it, but when it comes to training Corona, it's going to help him with his speed, his acceleration, and his turning. We've got Aryu, who's doing Taekwondo, I'm pretty sure. And I think this is training to kind of build up the skills he had in the second selection. What I mean by that is that he was able to shoot the ball from behind Isagi, right? So I imagine with a bit more experience in hand-to-hand combat, he's going to be a lot more accurate and better at doing that shit. And it's also going to help him with his reaction time because he does have quite a few off-the-line clears. We've got Sendou, who got fucking drafted, and I think this backs up that Sendou is indeed a restricted ego type, but you've got to hear me out for this. I did want to go into detail about this, but Aero Assassin beat me to it, but he does have a good point. I think that Sendou is going to awaken Predator Eye because he has the foundations of earning it. So with the evidence of how Sai was treating him and the fact he was able to play so well in Ubers, which is a restricted environment if you're not the striker, Sendou is definitely a restricted ego type. And if you want more evidence, you can look up what a restricted ego type is. I don't think I have the screenshot because I did clear my fucking camera and everything before I went on my trip. But to basically give you the quick rundown, there are two types of restricted ego type. There is the type that follows the rules that are set in place for them. And then there's the rebellious side, where they rebel against the rules that have been set in place for them. And Sendou falls into the category of the first example of restricted ego type that I've just said, because he literally said verbatim in the U20 game, if it means we'll win, I'll do what I'm told. So obviously that's him following the rules that are being set in place for him. And that basically covers the foundations of what you need to acquire Predator Eye. You just need to be a restricted ego type for now. That's the information we're all running off for now. So then, this is all important because now he's doing the other side of it, which is he's training his eye to focus on one specific thing. Because he's obviously looking through a fucking scope, so he's tunnel visioning on something. So this is basically Sendou practicing what he needs to do to acquire Predator Eye and use Predator Eye. And the training that Nanase got given was him training both the sides of his body, the left and the right, so he's completely naturally ambidextrous. And what I mean by that is that in the PXG game, we was told off Rin that Nanase is naturally ambidextrous, but he's kind of just pretty bad with both feet. Like, he was really clumsy, his passes weren't the best, his trapping wasn't the best. But that's not even me talking shit, because through sheer hard work, he managed to survive. But obviously, we're getting to the World Cup level now, so it's amazing that Nanase got this far of just basically dedication alone, but he needs a bit more help now. So he's basically training both the sides of his body at the exact same time to increase his accuracy, precision, all of that shit. Because if you look down there, he's picking up peas with chopsticks in both hands. Which, funny enough, I did the exact same thing when I was trying to eat ramen because I've never used chopsticks before. But then moving on, we see Nico is working out, and this is amazing because this is basically the only stat that Nico doesn't have. His vision is really good. I know in the NEL he did get outplayed by Isagi because he got drunk off his metavision acquirement. But at certain points in the story, you could make solid arguments that Nico did have better vision than Isagi at that time. So now Nico is basically copying what Isagi did, kind of like what I said that Karasu was doing. They're training themselves with strength in Nico's case and endurance in Karasu's case, because Nico does have the vision and kind of the stamina to do it all game. It's just that at the time, his meta vision usage wasn't that good and his physical stats kind of held him back. Because I'm not quoting this exactly because I have kind of forgot what he says exactly in this situation. But Nico does point out that Hiyori beats him on physical specs and not really when it comes to vision. They see the same, but Hiyori's got better physical stats, so that's why he's able to kind of breeze past Nico. We've got Fukaku, who's taking a shower. And I'm not going to lie, I don't know what to tell you about his training because I don't know Fukaku that much as a character. But kind of off topic, but still kind of on topic, the only person out of the surviving 23 that I'm probably going to shit on is going to be Fukaku. And it's not even necessarily because I hate him as a person. I think him surviving could have made sense. To a degree, I think it does make sense. I just think the fact that we saw a goalkeeper survive that didn't make a single fucking save, like, unironically, Sendou has more saves than Fukaku does. I think if we literally just saw one more save from Fukaku, everybody would have been fine. Because something else that kind of bugs me about Fukaku's character is that, yes, we probably could have seen him save one of Nagi's shots if the episode Nagi manga made it to the NEL. But because it didn't and because it ended, we don't get to see what he actually did. We just need to assume he made a save that game. Because I'm not going to sit here and be like, oh my god, we need to see every single feat of every single person to figure out how they got that bid. Because I don't think the fact that you've got to put 2 and 2 together is bad writing. Like, some of the characters, you've kind of got to figure out how they got there yourself. And I don't think that that's necessarily a problem. It is a problem, though, when you have a character that survives and we've never seen them ever be useful. Like, Fukaku made one save in the U20 game, and that's the only feat he has. Like, he's tied with Bachira's goalkeeper when it comes to saving feats. Let that sink in. Because Bachira's goalkeeper saved Kunigami's shot, which is 1-1 tied with Fukaku. So, until we get more information about Fukaku, this is probably going to be the only nigga I hate out of the top 23. But kind of finishing off the last three people, we've got Yukimiya, who's pulling out what looks to be kind of like, I think it's one of the samurai's like sub-knives, if that makes sense. I don't know the actual name for it because I'm not that much of a weeb. But I'm like 99% sure from my experience of playing Ghost of Tsushima that this is like kind of a sub-dagger that they use for assassinations. So the fact that Yukimiya's holding this means that he's definitely going to betray somebody in the future. And I hope to God it's Isagi. Like, get your get back, bro. He was talking mad shit about your dream. Because maybe it's just me, but I would have liked to have seen maybe some of the Blue Lockers side with Kaiser and or try to make their own side in the NEL. But it kind of just boiled down to, oh, everybody's joining Isagi's team. Like, maybe it's just me, but for those first 2-3 matches, it would have been nicer for Yukimiya to maybe team up with Kaiser, or him try to go by himself. Obviously, we see that Yukimiya did try to do it by himself. But I mean, it would have been nice if some other character tried to team up with him, or some other character tried it as well. Maybe that's just me, though. We've got Zantetsu, who's basically just doing sprint training, kind of working on that acceleration. And I think this is definitely setting up that Zantetsu and Chigiri are going to be the counters to Loki. Because obviously, I know Chigiri needs to work on his stamina anyway, but with Ego saying that he needs to work on it even more, even after playing for Manshine, you know, the team that already made it so he can sprint pretty much all game, it definitely feels, to me at least, that Ego's training Chigiri and Zantetsu to be the counters to Loki. So maybe it's just me, but with Chigiri just finishing playing for Manshine and Manshine being like the body revolution sort of team, he wouldn't then need to increase his stamina even more after that experience, right? Unless Ego was planning to use him for something. And I think the same goes for Zantetsu. It's just that Zantetsu's working on the acceleration part. Chigiri's working on the keeping at the same speed as him part. And then last but not least, we see Aiku, and he's kind of studying Kingscraft, and I think that's sportsmanship administration down there. So either this is Aiku training to be a coach in the future, or he's training to be the captain. And it makes sense because Aiku is a talented learner because he's got metavision, so him being the captain could be a shout. It probably would make the most sense to make Isagi the captain because he's the main character and he's the best at the moment and he's a talented learner, so he's going to be able to read and use everyone usefully. But if they're choosing to make Aiku the captain, that could make a lot of sense because he's always going to be at the back of the field kind of seeing everything. Like, even though Isagi does have metavision and he's constantly scanning the field, we've seen that he's not perfect when it comes to that. Like, in the Ubers game, for example, Isagi and Kaiser go to tackle Lorenzo, but they leave Barrow open. Like, if Hiyori didn't block that pass, they were fucked. So, obviously, if Aiku does become the captain, that could make a lot of sense. Again, though, I do think it makes the most sense for Isagi to be the captain because he's the main character, he's the best, whatever. But if it's Aiku, it could make sense because he's a very chill guy. And then, last but not least, Anri's training. I am being semi-sarcastic with this because I am going to overanalyze the shit out of this. But I genuinely think Anri's homework was to just start to look after herself better. Because think about it so far, right? Anri's been so focused on the Blue Lock program and making Japan actually be a team that could win the U20 World Cup. And helping Ego survive because this nigga's not cooking. And keeping up to date with all the players' information and Kunigami's current state and where everybody is at the moment and kind of all the behind-the-scenes stuff. Unironically, I think this was actually a piece of advice basically saying, like, don't forget to take care of yourself too. Because like I said, Blue Lock is self-improvement themed around football. So in Anri's case, I think this is kind of the example of like, yes, you're doing everything right and you've got the passion there and you've got the ego there and you're willing to learn and you're still learning. But don't forget that you're still a human, you still need to sleep, you still need time to yourself. And I'm not gonna lie, Anri's actually the GOAT. This series wouldn't exist without her. Ego probably still wouldn't be alive without her. And a lot of your favorite characters wouldn't have been fucking picked. So put some respect on Anri's name. But anyway, I'm pretty sure that's my yap session done for now. So thanks for indulging my bullshit as always. Never stop updating your world's perspective. Drink water, look after yourself. Peace.